In 1933, Bert Bell felt dejected. Bell was the new owner of the lowly Philadelphia Eagles, a team he purchased that same year for $2,500, money borrowed from his wife Frances, a successful star of Broadway and Hollywood. The hapless Eagles needed a potential headliner on the field if they stood any chance of successfully competing against the big money powerhouse teams. Teams like the Bears, Packers, Giants, and Redskins. Teams who frequently attracted the most talented college stars.
Bust it. Let's go, spend it. Make it count, let's go.
Bert Bell knew just what his Philadelphia Eagles needed. Stanley Koska, a 6-foot, 220-pound, cocky, hard-charging linebacker and fullback from the University of Minnesota, who Bell thought could help deliver a championship to his beloved city. Bell traveled more than 1,100 miles from Philadelphia to Minnesota to meet with Koska, sincerely hoping to return home with an ironclad deal. But Koska kept stalling the frustrated Eagles owner. Bert Bell soon realized he was simply being used as leverage by a cheeky athlete for a better arrangement with a mightier team with deeper pockets.
He went out there and the guy, kept screwing him. He kept saying, I'm on the phone to the Giants, they'll give me more, this and that. And he said, I learned my problem is that we can't afford to compete with the other teams in the league.
A team would send me a wire and say they'd give me $3,500. I'd send a wire back and say Green Bay or the Chicago Bears said they'd give me $4,000. I just kept that up. Stan Koska, 1933.
On the train ride back, Bell was furious. He lost the deal to a scheming college provocateur who ultimately joined the Brooklyn Dodger football team. As Bert Bell peered through the train car window, watching the passing landscape winding its way back east, a thought suddenly struck him. He knew that unless the weaker NFL teams were given a level framework to compete with their well-financed rivals, the more vulnerable teams faced certain death, inevitably leading to the extinction of the National Football League. Bell's unorthodox idea to save the NFL was put forth to his fellow team owners.
He went to the owners' meeting in 1935, and he said, listen, I'm losing money, Art Rooney's losing money in Pittsburgh. Every team is losing money and could go out of business except for the Chicago Bears, the New York Giants, and the Green Bay Packers. He said, here's my proposal. He said, my proposal is let's have a draft that will have the teams in the inverse order with the worst records all the way up to the best. And that way we can distribute the wealth and the player has to play for that team. The greatest tribute to Bert Bell is he saved the NFL and all of sports, because without the draft, which by the way has been tested in the courts every year to try and get rid of it. They say it's a monopoly. Without that, all leagues, particularly the NFL, would have been gone. That's it.
Without ever knowing it, Stan Koska had changed everything. The first NFL draft was held February 1936 in Philadelphia, and soon every other professional sport followed. Basketball in 47, ice hockey in 1963, baseball 1965. All sports using the very framework a once agitated Bert Bell began outlining aboard an eastbound train.
Go ahead, Honolulu.
Just 5 years later, the NFL's fight for survival would be tested, which again pit Bert Bell against his rival owners.
I'll repeat that. President Roosevelt says that the Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii from the air.
After Pearl Harbor, nearly 1,000 NFL players suspended their careers to fight in a worldwide conflict covering Europe and the South Pacific. NFL owners panicked to stay afloat and recommended suspending the games until the war ended.
The NFL was going to shut down, by the way, and he said to them in the league meeting, if we shut down, we'll never open again. And convinced them, that was one of his other great decisions, to do that. So they stayed open and they played with a lot of different teams and a lot of fill-ins and stuff like that, while most of your good players were in the Second World War. But then when they came back, that was his first year when they made him commissioner.
Bert Bell was selected as the NFL's second commissioner in 1946.
It's interesting because everybody said, why are we appointing him commissioner? He can't win on the field, can't win off the field. He was then part owner, half owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the coach. And the reason I think that he was so great, an owner and somebody else pointed out, he lost all his money. He was a losing coach. He knew what it's like to have nothing. He's the perfect guy for us because he was an owner. He can talk to us that way. He was a player. He understands every aspect of the game and what it is like to lose.
There was no honeymoon period for the new commissioner. A gambling scandal broke out the night before the 1946 NFL championship between the Bears and Giants at the Polo Grounds in New York City. 2 Giants players were accused of taking bribes to fix the game. Hours later, when one player admitted to being offered a bribe, Bert Bell immediately suspended him for life and had no qualms about telling his son why.
And I have to send a message out because college football was so big that the pro game was in deep trouble. A gambling scandal all over. But he decisively, quickly decided, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to announce it to the press. Don't hide anything. This is the way it is. I think for the 3rd time, he saved the NFL.
There would also be a 4th time. In 1939, Bert Bell's Eagles lost to the Brooklyn Dodgers 23-14. Despite the loss, this was the first game ever to capture images of the match on an odd-looking lighted box that would soon overtake dominant radio, and it would astonish the world.
He saw the future of television and that it was a game made up perfectly. The stops, the starts, the time, today too much to get the commercials in, and the different type of tension and the type of game it was.
All of these inconceivable accomplishments lay ahead for Bert Bell long ago on a cold and miserable streamliner back to Philly. A life lesson he bestowed on his boy, which made the price of that train ticket worth every penny.
But he also said, you've got to go out and always challenge life.
For ACMI News, I'm Jeff Barnes.